we're going to illustrate how important the extracellular matrix is to us. Because we're going to take a look at a couple human diseases that are caused by defects in extracellular matrix proteins. Mutations where a protein is not made, or the gene's missing, or the gene's damaged in some way, you don't get the right kind of protein. And these diseases can be extremely nasty. Let's look at one of the first ones. It's a collection of diseases. Many of them are caused by defects in particular tropical collagen genes, meaning you cannot make the appropriate collagens that those tissues require. Others are caused by mutations in genes called keratins, which help glue epithelial cells together, among other things. And the first one is, I can't even begin to pronounce the full Latin name of it. It's often abbreviated as EBS. EBS is a collection of fortunately rare genetic diseases, many of them caused by certain collagen mutations. They don't make the right kind of collagen. But what happens is this. If you look at your skin cells are joined together largely by extracellular matrix. After all, the extracellular matrix glues tissues together, puts cells together to make tissue. And the outer layers of the skin are joined to the underlying layers of the dermis and things like that, also by extracellular matrix. Now, unfortunately, in EBS victims, that extracellular matrix is unusually weak. The cells don't stick together properly, nor do they stick to the underlying dermal layer. What it means is this. If you've ever seen the skin of a boiled tomato, you can peel off the underlying flesh real easily. Try that with a fresh tomato. You can separate the skin apart real easily. Think of your skin being like that, where it can easily rip apart or separate from the underlying layers, causing blisters and open, gaping wounds and things like that. That's what life is like with EBS. There's various versions differing in severity, but the severest versions die in early childhood of some kind of infection caused by massive blistering. Even a slightest touch will cause massive blistering in that area. Others, not quite as severe, you may live for several years or longer. The biggest problem, of course, is your skin's peeling off and blistering all the time, is infection. Usually that's what kills them. In fact, some years ago, there was somebody in Birmingham, the kid's probably dead by now, but was constantly covered in blisters all the time. And of course, it's excruciatingly painful. So it's a very, very nasty, but fortunately rare set of diseases. That's one of them. So that tells you, collagens can be very important. Another one, what's often called the brittle bone disease. Latin name is osteogenesis, that means bone formation. Imperfecta, that means screwed up really badly. Either term, very medical folks, you'll hear that term. It's often called brittle bone disease. Perfectly good example. Here again, you're missing certain collagen mutations that form the extracellular matrix of bone. Yes?
Can you spell what's after osteogenesis?
Oh, imperfecta. Imperfect with A on it. Okay.
I'm sorry, collagen mutations.
Yeah, it's certain collagen mutations that are important in making the extracellular matrix of bone that crystallizes the minerals around it. Many different versions of this. In the worst versions, it's embryonic lethal because your skeleton simply will not form at all. So you die in very early embryonic life, early in the first trimester. Other versions are less severe. You're born, but your bones are really, really fragile. They break with very little provocation. And sometimes we've had cases of people, for instance, kid bumps into something, breaks a bone. Kid goes to the hospital. Kid bumps into something few next day or whatever, breaks another bone. Kid goes to the hospital. Hospital gets suspicious. By law, they're supposed to report suspected child abuse. There have been people that have been arrested and at least initially charged with child abuse that were totally innocent because their kids had fragile bones. There are genetic tests available for many. So some cases people saw, lawyers said, well, I don't think these people look like the kind that are brutally beating up their kids all the time. But there's a possibility of a genetic disease. Orders the genetic test, gets the result, yes, the kid does have this, shows that the DA charges are dropped. So occasionally that happens. Now, one thing that's kind of fortunate for this, it shows you how the body kind of can respond. As a person with this gets older, they will overproduce other types of collagens to try to pinch hit for the missing ones. So the bones get stronger, so it they don't break anywhere near as easily as they did in childhood. The body's trying to adapt and pinch hit for that. So, although these kind of people should definitely not go and try to play football, that would be a really bad idea. They can live a more or less normal life, but they will break their bones a lot easier than the average person. Not as bad as when they were kids. But that's another thing. Numerous versions that lead to improper bone formation, fragile bones. In the worst cases, bones simply don't form at all. Final one I like to mention, I don't know the name of this, but once again, it's missing some of the sheet-forming collagens. Now, if you look at your blood vessels, you have a thin layer of endothelial cells, but what keep the blood vessels intact are these layers of connective tissue. If you've ever eaten a piece of liver or something, sometimes you get a big, huge blood vessel in there, a big, huge vein, and that vein's got that tough, gristly stuff. That's connective tissue. All of our blood vessels have these surrounding layers of connective tissue to give strength and integrity to the blood vessels. Now, many of those are sheet-forming collagens that form this kind of stuff. So what would happen if you happen to be missing some of the appropriate collagens? It means the connective tissue around your blood vessels are not right. They're weak. They're fragile. That's not good. So, if you have fragile blood vessels, that means they can rupture. They can split open. And what blood vessel is probably likely to take the worst punishment? Because every second or so, pump, 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 you get these pressure pulses. What's the blood vessel that's going to get the worst punishment in that? It's the aorta, the one coming right out of the ventricle, and then branching off and going to the rest of your body. Major artery. The aorta gets the worst punishment. So if you got one of these kinds of diseases, what likely is to happen is without warning or provocation, it's one pump too many through the aorta, it just splits open like a water balloon. 30 seconds later, you're unconscious. By the time the EMT people get to you, you're already dead. Without any warning. It happened to somebody when I was an undergrad. Somebody was about to graduate, my graduating class, didn't know him very well. Somebody found him dead one morning. His aorta just split wide open. He bled to death in his sleep without ever even knowing what happened. Nowadays, there are genetic tests for various versions of it. If there's a family history of people suddenly catastrophically collapsing and dying in like their teens or 20s, you probably want to get those genetic tests. Nowadays, of course, if you have that, what they'll do is they'll wrap sort of essentially a stent around it to protect the aorta and keep it from ripping open. And that will give you a good shot. If you don't know about it, everything could be fine one moment, next moment, you're unconscious and dying. Yeah. So, here again, collagen mutations. That's illustrating the vast importance of the extracellular matrix in organismal structure. So, what we're going to do when we come back on Tuesday is we're going to look at the signaling and other roles of the extracellular matrix. So I'll see you folks in lab. When you get in the lab, once again,